honorable death and what makes life worth it. So I want to start by saying that I'm afraid of death, and if my life was threatened, I would obviously be afraid. Everything would be afraid of death. I think it's pretty natural, because naturally everything wants to or has an instinct to stay alive. So everything wants to stay alive, but why? All things strive to continue as if with some kind of unspoken purpose. What is this purpose, and what is it not? So I think we can maybe imagine a life without purpose. Not all life is worth living. Some things make life truly unlivable, not only because they are difficult to live through physically, like a war or a famine, but mentally too. Some people will experience a catastrophe, or they will even witness one, and then they'll be convinced that life were some kind of accident, all life in the universe, or that it wasn't all that worth it to just continue on living. So this can be thought of as like the worst life, this kind of catastrophe that I'm talking about, the catastrophe of meaning. We should try and build our values concerning life with the highest regards to the opposite of this type of life, by means of preserving the beauty and meaning in life. So, Friedrich Nietzsche's work has a concept, master morality and slave morality. You can almost imagine this as a battle between people, where the man that wants to live at all costs, even at the cost of his freedom and his comfort, and being completely subjected to the whims of another, but if it means they can hold on to whatever slight comfort you get from merely living life, they'll just cling on to that. So that's the morality of a slave. The morality of a master is one who is willing to die for what is important, what makes life worth living. So if they're the threat of being completely subjected to the will of an outsider, if this makes life unlivable, they would rather die. They would rather kill and die for their freedom and their control. And so this kind of conflict, this kind of metaphorical conflict, separates the master from the slave, these two kinds of people, and two kinds of morality. In Japan, there's a concept called harikari, which is a practice of ritualistic suicide, and many ancient peoples knew that death was a part of the natural cycle of life. All life ends in death, and therefore it didn't matter if you died, but how you died. So honor and ideals were something most people were willing to die for. The people most willing to put their lives on the line for honor or good ideals were made heroes and oftentimes leaders. In ancient Japan, failure was worse than death, and the Japanese had an art of casting your own life aside for honor, conquering their fear of death. And I do think that this is an art. So in one of the Platonic dialogues called the Phaedo, Socrates states that philosophy is just preparing oneself for death. He also lays out a theory of reincarnation based on this argument. All qualities have opposites. They require opposites to interact with and give them meaning. Each quality, cyclically, comes from its opposite. Night comes from day, day comes from night. Death certainly comes from after life, but can we say that life comes from death? Is the opposite true? Well, supposedly life had a beginning, right? Either at conception, or if you want to say that the cells, that, the sperm cells or egg cells or whatever, that these were also alive. I mean, certainly life at some point had a beginning, or that life is just everywhere and is just in very, very simple parts and that they form over time complex life, and death in this sense, or dead matters, is sort of an illusion. But let's go with the idea that life comes from dead matter. I mean, then obviously life would come from death. If all structure descends into entropy and chaos and stayed there, there would be no structure at all. There would only be entropy. But if structure changes, and if things change, different objects change their structure, then at some point this process had a beginning, which means that structure came from chaos. And if you believe in the Big Bang, you believe that, there was nothing. You believe that space was totally empty and dark, and that light and life and order just sprung out of nothing, which is a kind of miracle. So if dead entropic matter and darkness gave rise to structure, life, light, order, then when something living dies, it isn't fully ever dead. Structure and life will once again come from darkness and chaos. So death in that sense is certainly nothing to fear. And you shouldn't be focused on just staying alive at any cost. You should focus on trying to achieve a good life, because even if you die for the good life, that's not going to be fully ever the end for you. So, like I said before, you should construct your values based on the highest life, something that is, quite frankly, the opposite of the worst life. What is something you would not tolerate living through, and what would make life worth living, and construct your values explicitly based on those things that give life value and negating the worst aspects of life. So, like, if you were willing to die for your home or your family or your higher values or your friends, your health, because the opposite of these things would make life truly untenable, then those are your values. So what would make life worth living for you?